So here first, when a patient would arrive into the clinic or such, I would then get the patient's history. So I would ask basic questions such as how did the injury happen, which then he would answer. Do you have any symptoms currently, or did you have symptoms when it first happened? Do you have any previous, as we're dealing with concussions, and this is the concussion protocol, so I'll ask him, do you have any previous history of any concussions? If so, yes, how many? When specifically did they happen? How did they happen? What symptoms were you dealing with in the last concussion, and are the symptoms any different to now? I would ask for the concussion now or before, how long did the symptoms last? So this permission here goes for the whole video. So Jack, do I have permission to touch you?
You do. Jaden, do I have permission to touch you?
You do. Okay, so I will be cerebral function testing. So I would have my patient just sit down, just relax, and I would ask them some questions and see if they're able to answer them. So first here, I would ask my patient Jack if he could recite the days of the week backwards.
Saturday, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, Sunday.
Yeah, so I probably should have told him to start sign. Either way, he did it correct, so it's not a positive, that's a negative test. Or I could ask him to count backwards from 20 by threes.
20, 17, 14, 11, 8, 5, 2, -1.
See? So he would be negative there, meaning his cerebral function is A-okay. For other parts of the cerebral function, I then would ask him like orientation questions, the time, date, and place, maybe of an injury he had, if he's in here for his injury, or just in general. I also would ask him like the effect of his emotional state currently right now, his consciousness right now, and if he has any speech problems, or I can tell if he has any speech problems, but in this case, he has none of the above.
So the next thing we'd be testing was the cerebellar function. So I would ask my patient to do like the Romberg test. So I ask them to close their eyes, tilt your head backwards, and just from that I'd tell if he was like had a imbalance or was nauseous. In this case, he's good. And then I'd ask him to do some heel to toe walking to see his balance and coordination.
Yeah. Heel to toe.
Heel to toe.
Totally good, yeah.
Looks good. Next, I'd have my patient with their eyes closed, outstretch their arms, and then touch their finger to their nose. Good. I would have you stand straight ahead and face me. Back up. I'm gonna look straight at me and touch my fingers. Good. And then the last test I do was a grip strength test, so I'd have them squeeze my fingers as hard as they can.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. Just to test if there's an imbalance or loss of strength or something.
So now we will be testing for cranial nerves. So for his first cranial nerve, the olfactory, I will be testing his smell. So I would ask my patient to have his eyes closed, and I would grab something pretty smelly, I mean, not bad, hopefully, but maybe like chapstick here I have. So I would ask him to let me know when he smells something.
Nah, smells like chapstick.
Which, that was a pretty good distance away, so that's good. So for this one, I will be testing his second cranial nerve, or the optic nerve, and this tests his peripheral vision. So in this test, I would usually have someone stand in front and tell my patient to look straight at the person in front and do not, just to make sure the eyes aren't moving when I'm doing this, but we don't have another person, so you'll be the other person. So this, I'm gonna ask my patient to just stay looking straight and to let me know when he sees my fingers in his peripheral.
No.
Perfect. Which, that is pretty good. He saw that right in line, a little bit forward of his shoulders, which is good. So for the third one, testing his oculomotor cranial nerve, we're going to be looking at dilation of the pupil. So I would have my patient stand up or sit down, either or, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to have the lights off so you can see the dilation, and you need a light, so like your phone light or anything. And you're gonna bring it from the side of his face to the front of it and pull away. You should see the eye dilate and what so not, and constrict. So as you can see, his eyes constricted when the light had gotten close to him, and they dilated when it was away, meaning good. So for the fourth cranial nerve, I'll be testing the trochlear nerve, and this is going to be testing the down and side movement of his eyes. So here I would ask my patient then to follow my pointer finger without moving his head. He was able to do it without moving his head, and there was no problems, so he is good. So for the fifth cranial nerve, I'll be testing the trigeminal nerve, which then I would ask my patient here to chew. If he had gum, I would give gum to him, but he doesn't, so I would ask him to pretend to chew. And then there's no discomfort there, so then I would ask him to then bite down for about 5 seconds. Good. And there are no problems, no discomfort, so he is A-okay.
Trochlear are the same.
So for the cranial nerve abducens, or the sixth one, it's just the side-to-side movements of the eye, which we already performed that with the trochlear nerve. So if you could just imagine, instead of going up and down, you only go side to side.
For cranial nerve number 7, the facial nerve, I'll ask my patient to just like make a funny face or smile or all sorts of stuff with their face, just to make sure all their facial muscles are working properly. Doesn't look like we have any problems there, so that is good. For the vestibulo-ocular nerve, the test we'd be doing this one for would be sound and our balance, because it's an ear one. So for the first test I'll do, I'll have my patient close their eyes and tell me when they hear the snap of my finger and what side it's coming from.
I hear it from this side of me.
Good.
I hear it on this side.
Good, and then I'll ask my patient to stand on one foot and balance there for 5 seconds. Switch legs. And that's good. You're good. I don't have one. For the glossopharyngeal nerve, I'd ask my patient to open their mouth and I'd stick a tongue depressor down and test their gag reflex, but I don't happen to have one at the moment. So, and then for the next nerve, the vagus nerve, I'll ask my patient to say ah.
Ah.
Good. Next nerve is the accessory nerve, so I'd ask my patient to shrug their shoulders with a little bit of resistance. Good. One more time. Good. And the last nerve we'll be testing is the hypoglossal nerve, which I'd ask my patient to stick their tongue out and wiggle it all around, up, down, side to side. Good.
So here we will be myotome testing, specifically the upper limbs, just to start. So to test C1 and C2, I will ask my patient to just sit comfortably on the table and to perform flexion and extension, or in their terms, I would ask my patient to bring his chin down to his chest. Good. And then bring his chin to the sky. Good. That looks good. So to test for C3, I would then ask my patient to bring his ear to each shoulder. Good. Go the other way. Good. So C4 here, I would ask my patient to shoulder shrug, but with a little bit of resistance. So bring your shoulders to the sky. There you go. Perfect. And then for C5, I'm going to ask my patient to perform shoulder abduction. So I would then, ask my patient to stand up, keep a straight arm, and bring your hand to the sky. Good. Now the other arm. Perfect. So for C6, we're going to perform elbow flexion and wrist extension with a little bit of resistance. So I would ask my patient to bend their elbow. Good. We're only going to test one at a time. And I would then ask them, to keep their fingers extended out, and I would ask them to keep their wrist a little, extend it to there. So then he's going to keep stable here, and I'm going to apply a little bit of resistance at the end of the fingers. Good. And then I would do the same thing on the other side. So here I will be performing C7 myotome test. So I'll have my patient sit down here and have their elbow would be extended, and I'm gonna apply resistance down, and I'm gonna have my patient resist against it for about 5 seconds. So then I would ask my patient, ready, set, go. Good. So for C8, I'm gonna ask my patient, I'm gonna hold out, we'll say like 3 fingers or so, or all of them, it doesn't really matter. And I'm gonna ask him to then squeeze my fingers for about 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't notice any strength imbalances, so he is good. So for T1, we're gonna perform finger abduction and adduction. So I'm gonna ask my patient to open his fingers and close them, but I'm gonna apply a little resistance to each of it. So this one, good. And now he's gonna go in with it, and I'm gonna apply resistance out. Good. Now we'll do the same thing to the other hand.
For the lower limb myotome testing, the first one is the L2. So this one is hip flexion. So I'll ask my patient to raise their knee up to the sky. And then I'll do it again, but this time with resistance. That is good. The next myotome we're testing is L3. So I'll ask my patient to bring their knee up into flexion. And then I'm going to apply some resistance as he's bringing it into extension. And then I'd test the other leg as well. The next myotome we're testing is the L4, which is ankle. So I will ask my patient to dorsal flex, and I will apply resistance to it. Good. And then I'm not going to do that one. For the L5, it's the greater toe extension. So I'm going to ask the patient to extend their big toe while I apply resistance to it. Good. Good work. So the S1 myotome is ankle plantar flexion. So for this one, I'm going to have the patient start in dorsal flexion, and then I'm going to apply some resistance as they push down into plantar flexion. I'll test both legs as well. And the last myotome we're testing is the S2, which is knee flexion. So for this one, I'll have them lay on their stomach. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to have them start with a straight leg, and I'm going to apply resistance as they bring it into knee flexion. Good. And test both legs on that one as well.
So now for dermatome testing, I will then now be testing C2, C3, and C4. So for this, I would ask my patient to close his eyes. And for C2, I'm going to be up like the neck area. And I will test you, for the rest of the videos, you would be testing both sides to see the affected and unaffected and see the difference if you can feel it or if you cannot. But for the sake of the video, from now on, we're just going to be testing the affected side or the one side. So here, I'm going to ask him tell me when he can feel it and kind of where the area.
Now on the right side of my neck.
Okay, that's C2. C3, I'm going to go a little bit lower here.
A little bit lower, same area, same side.
Okay. C4, I'm going to kind of get into the collarbone area.
Now, right side collarbone.
Okay. So now I will be testing C5, so I ask my patient to close his eyes and to let me know when and where he feels it.
Now, front side of my arm.
Okay. And then I'm going to be testing C6, which is going to get a little bit lower here.
Now, on my forearm, top of my forearm.
Okay. So for C7 here, we will be testing. I'm going to then just keep the process going. I'm going to ask the patient to keep his eyes closed, and I'm going to rub and ask him when and where he feels it. So now, for C7, I'll be getting the middle finger, but
Top of my middle finger.
perfect. And now for C8, I'm going to move over into this area.
Now on my pinky.
Perfect. Which is C8. T1, I'm going to ask him to, kind of turn his arm over here. I'm going to rub where T1 would be.
Into your side of my forearm.
Just kind of the inner side of his forearm. And now for the last one here, I'll be doing T2, which is higher up here. It's going to be on the inside of the bicep. Don't let him know.
inside of the bicep.
Good.
Next, we will be testing our lower half dermatomes. So the first one is your L1. So I'll be asking my patient to tell me where they feel the brush and when they feel it.
Feel it now, right on my right leg, kind of near my area.
All right. Next is L2.
Yeah, I feel it there, a little lower on my right leg, near, a little like my upper thigh.
L3.
Feel that now, above my knee on my right thigh.
Good. Next, we'll be doing our L4 and L5 dermatomes. So for the L4, it'll be in here.
Feel it now, in like my upper calf area, on my right leg.
And then L5.
Feel it now on the outside of my right leg calf.
Good. The last two dermatomes we'll be testing is the S1 and S2. So S1, tell me when you feel it and where you feel it.
I feel it now on like the middle of my calf and my left leg.
Back of your calf, good. And then S2.
I feel it now on the like backside of my thigh, my left leg.
Good. And for all these, we'll be testing bilaterally as well.
So for this here, we're going to be doing deep tendon reflex testing. So here, I will be starting with C5, and I'll be testing that on the biceps. So I will find the biceps tendon, which is right about here, with the thumb, and I'm grabbing onto the rest of his arm just to keep firm control. And with this here, you're going to strike your thumb, and then you're going to see a reflex happen within the biceps, maybe even feeling it too with your thumb. As you can see, he is good. His muscles are working well. So here I will be testing C6 for the brachioradialis tendon, and I will ask my patient to have his hand supinated or palm to the sky, which then I'm going to go from the wrist. I'm going to go about 2-3 inches above. I'm going to feel the tendon, which is right about here. I can feel it. Which then I'm going to grab the flat side and I'm going to hit, and his hand should give a little jerk. It's not going to be much, but a little bit. Just a little. Yeah. Good. It's working well. So now I'll be deep tendon reflex testing C7, or I'll be doing it at the triceps. So here, I'm going to ask my patient to completely relax. All the weight is going to be on my hand, and then I'm going to find the triceps tendon, which is about here, right? It's above the elbow. Not very many, not even an inch above the elbow. I'm gonna hit where my thumb is, but I'm not gonna have my thumb there. And you should see a little move, a little jerk, just what happened there within the arm. So here I will be deep tendon reflex testing L4. So I would ask my patient to sit here, relax his leg completely, and you're going to find the patella here and the tibial tuberosity, and the space in between is where this tendon lies. And you're going to use the flat side here, and you're just going to, a little too high, which you can see a little bit there.
The next deep tendon reflex we're going to do is the S1, which is the Achilles tendon. So for this one, I'll bring my patient's foot up into dorsal flexion, and I'll be hitting on the back side of the leg on the Achilles tendon, and I'll see a plantar flexion type of reflex. The next thing we're testing is going to be the Babinski reflex, which is mostly prominent on infants and children. But for this, I'll be running some sort of hammer on the back side of the hammer on the bottom of the foot, and I'll get a curling of the toes reflex. I can't wait to take a review. The next and final reflex we're going to be testing is the ankle clonus reflex. So for this one, I'll be having my patient dangle their legs off the table, and I'll be supporting the leg that I'm trying to test, and I'm going to be taking their foot and driving it up into dorsal flexion and waiting on their response. So for this one, I'll be bringing it up quickly into dorsal flexion, and this one you see that there's no bouncing of the foot, which if there's bouncing, that would be a positive sign. Through in concussion evaluation would be like the Virginia Tech Impact Lab. This is a private, independent resource that has been testing helmets for the last decade and a half, and they do so by taking each individual helmet and testing it on its impact reduction and safety, and then they give it a 5-star rating where they post publicly for everybody to see with prices of each helmet and all sorts of information on how it tested and why it got the rating it did. This is a good source for youth or even professional football players, or any sport. They test for 7 or 8 different sports to get a good baseline of which helmets they should be using to try and prevent concussions. Now, these ratings, or none of these helmets are going to prevent concussions in total, but they will help overall help with safety in the end.
And for the last thing, this is talking about the NFL return to play protocol, which step 1 being the symptom limited activity, which then the player is well rested and they're avoiding activity, staying off their feet. They're getting as much sleep as possible, letting their body rest. If that's for a concussion, then they're just, getting away from lights, they're getting away from different things that keeps the brain functioning. For step 2, they're going to move to aerobic exercise once they move from phase 1. So the exercise then will be under someone, maybe a physician or someone in that nature will be watching them do exercises that they have made specifically for that person and their injury, which then phase 3 moves on to the football specific exercise. So maybe cutting, maybe sports specific, so like a linebacker, maybe they're cutting and working, turning their hips and things in that nature. And then phase 4, you have the club-based non-contact training drills, which then they could start working in maybe some ladder drills, maybe some cone work for their footwork to keep up their aerobic exercise and things in that nature. So not only are they helping the injury of the concussion, but they're also getting their body right and getting it ready for when they have to go and play. And for phase 5, which is this is the last phase, it's the full football activity and clearance. So once they hit this phase, they should be well ready to go into practice. They should be doing all the practice drills they can, and if they would get re-injured, you restart the whole process. But yeah, in phase 5, they should be fully ready to go. The physician or whoever is in charge should have they should be fully sure that this athlete is ready to go back to play.